Welcome everyone to our episode number 64 of our podcast, Cultivating a New Generation. In today's episode, we are going to dive deep into the topic of using your heart to guide your life. I'm going to review an article from the author McCarthy and Atkinson from 2009, The Coherent Heart-Brain Interactions, Psychophysiological Coherence, and the Emergence of System-Wide Order. The journal is Integral Review, and we are going to go into the science of the heart, how we create that coherence, and how it's not just listening to your gut, it's much more than that. And your heart is not just the pump that helps the blood to flow through the organs and deliver the nutrients and the oxygen. Is a lot more. So we are going to discover many of the secrets of the heart, many of the techniques that you can start using in order to get greater coherence and enhance your homeostatic process inside of you. The concept of coherence is drawn on your understanding of optimal functioning, which is naturally reflected in the heart rhythmic patterns. Research is presented identifying various psychophysiological states linked to these patterns, with neurocardiological coherence emerging as having significant impacts on your well-being. So regulating your heart, it is allowing many of your organs, many of the vibrations of the organs, the signals, to be delivered in a proper way and to create that rhythmic symphony through your body, and also giving you those rhythmic patterns that are going to be very helpful in order to deliver the signals in the proper timing, such as the circadian clocks that we also have. If you see it like that, your body is always playing a symphony, whether it is to these vibrations of the heart and brain coherence and synchronization, or in the other sense, through the light cycles that we are absorbing light, usually in the morning, and then setting the master clock in our brains in order to regulate many of the functions. So there are organisms states in which the regulation of life processes becomes efficient or even optimal, free-flowing and easy. It is just like when you are not making an effort to perform many of the physiological processes that you have inside of you. This is a well-established physiological fact. It is not a hypothesis. It has been proven already by research and by many of these internal pathways that we have. The feelings that usually accompany such physiological conducive states are deemed positive or in the up-regulating fashion, characterized not just by the absence of pain, but by our varieties of pleasure. There are also organisms states in which life processes struggle for balance and can even be chaotically out of control, which is what we know as disease. It is not a balance, it is in a chaos state. It is when you are leading with stress your life. The feelings that usually accompany such states are deemed negative, characterized not just by the absence of pleasure, but by varieties of pain. The fact that we sentient and sophisticated creatures call certain feelings positive and other feelings negative is directly related to the fluidity or strain or of the life process. So we are labeling positive or negative in terms of the pain, in terms of the energy that we are investing, and in terms of the difficulty that we have in order to perform them. The analysis of heart rate variability, or HRV, a measure of the naturally occurring beat-to-beat changes in heart rate, provides an indicator of neurocardiac fitness and autonomic nervous system function. Abnormally low 24-hour HRV is predictive of increased risk of heart disease and premature mortality. HRV is also highly reflective of stress and emotions. So what does this mean? This means that whether you have this heart rate variability abnormally low in a period of 1 day or 24 hours, you are more prone to develop risk heart disease and premature mortality, and also many of chronic diseases that we are going to review in this talk. HRV, if it is stable and if it is balanced in 24 hours periods in 1 day, then you are able to be regulating your stress and your emotions in a proper way. That's what we want. And that's all of the vibrations that our heart is giving to the brain and sending these signals pathways through the vagus nerve and connecting it to the other organs. So it's creating the symphony. Many contemporary scientists believe that the quality of feeling and emotion we experience in each moment is rooted in the underlying state of our physiological processes. This view is well expressed by neuroscientist Antonio Damasio in the epigram that opened the article that we are reviewing. So the essence of his idea of Antonio Damasio, that we call certain emotional feeling positive and others negative, because this experience directly reflects the impact of the fluidity or strain of the life process on the body, is clearly evident in our lives. So it is the feelings we experience as negative that are indicative of body states in which life processes struggle for balance and can even be chaotically out of control. So this is one of the signatures of the negative feelings that we are experiencing. They are the signals of our body that we are not in coherence, we are not in proper regulation states, and we are priming ourselves toward developing disease if we continue under those threats. By contrast, the feelings we experience as positive actually reflect body states in which the regulation of life processes becomes efficient or even optimal, free-flowing, and easy. So those are the different kinds of labels that we have to recognize the feelings that we are perceiving, and by perceiving which ones we have more, that's the indicator of the coherence that we have internally. Research on heart coherence discusses how sustained positive emotions facilitate an emergent global shift in psychophysiological functioning, which is marked by a distinct change in the rhythm of the heart activity. This global shift generates a state of optimal function, characterized by increased synchronization, harmony, and efficiency in the interactions within and among the physiological, cognitive, and emotional systems. So we are connecting here your physiology, your psychology, the learning process, the memory process, of course, and your emotional systems, just by having this synchronization of the heart and brain. We call this state psychophysiological coherence. So that's when we have these rhythmic waves in the HRV that we reviewed before. The most basic definition of information is data which inform or give shape to action or behavior, such as a message that conveys meaning to the recipient of a signal. So what is this scientific jargon trying to tell us? That the way our body is communicating in terms of the information that can be in terms of chemical messages, in terms of vibration of the molecules, in terms of the feelings which are indicative of how you are feeling and the internal coherence that you have, are giving you the meaning or the overall meaning of how you feel, how you are internally, in terms of these patterns of waves that are going to create either health or disease. In human language, abstract symbols like words, numbers, graphical figures, and even gestures and vocal intonation are used to encode the meaning conveyed in a message. In terms of the physiology, in the physiological systems, changes in chemical concentration, the amount of biological activity, or the pattern of rhythmic activity are common means by which information is encoded in the movement of energy to inform system behavior. So all of these forms of communication in your body are concentrating into an informing system that is the way you are feeling, and that can be measured through this heart rate variability throughout one day, and of course throughout a week or throughout a month. But mainly we have to focus on one day so that we can divide the way we are feeling and start regulating our stress in the following days. Thus, by communication, we mean a process by which meaning is encoded as a message and transmitted in a signal to be received, processed, and comprehended by the various elements of a system. Coherence in ordinary language means correlations, sticking together, or connectedness. Also, a consistency in the system. So we refer to people's speech or thought as coherent if the parts fit together well, and incoherent if they are uttering meaningless nonsense. Coherence in this context refers to the wholeness and the global order. This is the coherence as a distinctive organization of the parts, the relations among which generate an emergent whole that is greater than the sum of the individual parts. So it's much better to listen to someone that has coherence in the speech, in the way that he or she connects ideas, than listening to a politician speak and not understanding a word he's saying, or he is just repeating incoherent things. So that's like the most common example. Almost all politicians in all over the world speak incoherently and speak repetitive and speak many things that don't even make sense. So that's an example of incoherent in language, and in your body, the incoherence translates as these kind of negative feelings that you are perceiving. And that's the system telling you that something is not right. That's why we have to allow time to feel the emotions so that we can process the meaning of them. In a living system, global order or coherence must be sustained and maintained over time. For example, the biochemist and geneticist Mac 1 in 1998 has suggested that a whole living system is a domain of coherent, autonomous activity that is coordinated across a continuum from the molecular to the macroscopic and to the social levels. So we are going from the atoms to the molecules, to the messages, to the tissues, to the cells, to the tissues, to the organs, to the systems, and through a society. The more coherent we are, the more we replicate these in the different models. Psychophysiology is concerned with the interrelations among the physiological, cognitive, and emotional systems and human behavior. It is now evident that every thought, every attitude, every emotion has a physiological consequence, and that patterns of physiological activity continually influence our emotional experience, thought processes, and behavior. So if we have an emotion, then previously we should have a thought, and the thought, the emotion, is going to generate a behavior. So if we start monitoring more, and you don't have to monitor all the thoughts, what this message is trying to tell us is that you perceive the general picture of how you are feeling and the general kind of thoughts or the profile of thoughts that you are having in order to see how are you feeling, positive or negative. What is the overall sum of your days? At the Institute of the Heart Math, the people that did the research determined which physiological variables were most sensitive to and correlated with changes in emotional states. In analyzing many physiological measures, such as the heart rate, electroencephalographic and electromyographic activity, so the brain and the heart, respiration, skin conductance, they discover that the rhythmic pattern of the heart activity was directly associated with the subjective activation of distinct emotional states, and that the heart rhythm pattern also reflected changes in emotional states in that it co-varied with emotions in real time. So the moment you start feeling some of those negative emotions, that immediately reflects in the electrical activity that you're having either in your heart or in your brain. And that is going to be reflected in the messages that you are going to send throughout your body. They found strong differences between quite distinct rhythmic beating patterns that were readily apparent in the heart rhythm trace and that directly match the subjective experience of different emotions. In short, they found that the pattern of the heart's activity was a valid physiological indicator of emotional experience, and that indicator was reliable when repeated at different times in different kind of populations. So this information that is giving us in the heart and the rhythmic patterns that we are sending to the brain are going to have a specific signature if it is positive, and that is going to send the proper messages throughout your organs, throughout your cells, so that they perform the according actions. Heart rate variability is a product of the dynamic interplay of many of the body's systems. Short-term beat-to-beat changes in heart rate are largely generated and amplified by the interaction between the heart and the brain. This interaction is mediated by the flow of neural signals through the efferent and afferent pathways of the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of the autonomic nervous system, or ANS. HRV is thus considered a measure of neurocardiac function that reflects heart-brain interactions and ANS dynamics. This dynamic regulation system of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system is allowing you to either have the proper metabolism functions that you are performing, or priming your body to be in stress mode. And being in that sympathetic mode or stress mode are going to lead you to disrupted signals. Heart rhythms associated with positive emotions, such as appreciation, are clearly more coherent, organized, and stable patterns of repeating sine waves than those generated during a negative emotional experience, such as frustration, which is just giving a lot of incoherent patterns in the waves. People in this research observed that this association between positive emotional experience and this distinctive physiological pattern was evident in studies conducted in both laboratory and natural settings, and for both spontaneous emotions and intentional generated feelings. Research has shown that the negative emotions such as frustration, anger, anxiety, and worry lead to heart rhythm patterns that appear incoherent, highly variable, and erratic. Overall, this means that there is less synchronization between your heart and your brain, and the reciprocal action of the parasympathetic and sympathetic branches of your autonomic nervous system. Over the past several decades, several lines of scientific evidence have established that far more than a mechanical pump, the heart functions as a sensory organ and as a complex information encoding and processing center. Groundbreaking research in the relatively new field of neurocardiology has demonstrated that the heart has an extensive intrinsic nervous system that is sufficiently sophisticated to qualify as a little brain. That's why it's also called the second brain, or the first brain, we should say, in its own right. The pioneer neurocardiology researcher Andrew Armour first described the anatomical organization and function of the heart brain in 1991. So we have almost 22 years that this kind of information, more 31 years, that this information has been relevant in the realm of science. And we are still having those incongruent patterns just because we don't have time to pause, to reflect, and to feel the emotions. Containing over 40,000 neurons, this system, its complex circuitry enables to sense, to regulate, and to remember. Moreover, the heart brain can process information and make decisions about cardiac control independent of the central nervous system. The heart brain senses hormonal, heart rate, and blood pressure signals, and those translate into neurological impulses and processes. This information internally is going to send to the central brain via afferent pathways in the vagus nerve and spinal column. When the different hormones and neurotransmitters in the bloodstream are detected by those sensory neurites in the heart, the pattern in the afferent neural output sent to the brain is modified. So this is in real time, is sensing the chemical signature, the chemical messages, and changing the electrical pathways that are going to be sent to the brain so that you create that coherence. In other words, in addition to its better known functions, the heart is also a sensory center that detects and transmits information about the biochemical content of the regional blood flow. So you should really appreciate the information that your heart is sending you. And the emotions are the language of the heart. So that language has to be translated from you to interpret how do you feel. And by knowing how do you feel in a more sequenced way, in a more reflective and conscious way, you are going to be able to pause, to breathe, to walk, to have some measures so that you lower your stress levels and you start producing more coherent information inside of you. Neurological signals originating in the heart have an important and widespread influence in regulating the function of the organs and the system throughout your body. So all of that information that your heart is telling you in present time is really extremely helpful for you, so that you can process all that information and make a decision that allows you to keep on the health path, or if you don't pay attention, if you are more distracted, if you are telling that you don't have time, then what is going to happen is that you are going to keep sending the incoherent messages, disrupting the system, and translating that language into a very poor chemical signature that is going to disrupt completely your system and is going to lead you to feel more stressed. There are some moments in our lives where we feel that we deserve more, that life should have more spice many times to inspire us to pursue and give more. Moments that the job we are performing probably doesn't seem to be fulfilling, where we feel we are just being driven by the emotions of others. And when we are in a social circle that has those toxicity messages, we start to have a breaking down of the messages that we are receiving. So this is also transmitted through the people that you surround with, through the stimuli that you are receiving in the platforms that you are frequenting, and also the conscious process of your lifestyle. So it is all connected. It is in those moments when you feel that nothing is making sense and probably it looks like dark, sad, and filled with struggles, where the transformation spark can be fully ignited if you just pause, if you just take some time off, if you dare to go deep into the layers of the emotions that you are feeling, of the overwhelm and the stress that you are feeling. If you start using that fragile sense of feeling vulnerable and turn it into a flame to mold, to shape a new self, a new person that is going to be more responsible of creating coherence, because we all can create these coherent vibrations in our heart, and we are going to create pathways of chemical messages, of hormones, of neurotransmitters, of the pharmacy inside of ourselves to prime us, to boost our health, not to be in the threat mode, not to be under stress, not to be feeling powerless. It is in us the capacity to change the system through navigating in certain actions, encounters, jobs, relationships, trips. We can find a lot of wisdom about our own patterns, the choices that we have made, and of course, arrive to the core of our reflection process that is screaming to you to be initiated, to be changed. We have been given this immense opportunity to widen our horizons into a more reflective life, not a life that is reactive, not a life that is being primed by news, by platforms, by toxic people, but a life that is more conscious, that is sensing these emotions, that is allowing in one day just to, in overall, knowing what kind of thoughts are you having, what kind of emotions, are you really enjoying what you are doing? If not, start designing a plan of action to change job, to start doing something else, to start looking different people, to start empowering yourself, or having support from a coach or a guide that helps you to find your way in the future process that you want to start initiating. instead of being domesticated and being an end product of the society and the agenda to react. If you keep some of those rational mind during the past 2 years, where the whole experience was a shaking phenomenon that just had two effects on people, it might send you into a reactive mode and lure you into being more unconscious and diligent to follow and believe instructions delivered by fear, or it awakened your inner rational mind, helped you to be more in charge of your life and less worry of the external noise, because we already saw that there is a lot of incongruent messages, there is a lot of agenda-driven messages, and that is not good, neither for your heart, neither for your brain, neither for your whole system symphony that you are creating. So if you start analyzing the things and pausing more during your days, which is the reflective mode, you will create a life that is going to be guided by your heart. I hope this reflection of the whole science of the heart and how the messages are being translated and all the research that they have done helps you to start being more conscious, start choosing more everything that you are doing in your life, choosing the job, choosing the moments, choosing the meaning, choosing the intention, choosing the actions of nurturing your body and appreciating the food, choosing more to live the moments fully present in what you are doing, and you will see a complete different outlook of your life. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, if it resonates with you, please help me to share the message with your family, with your friends, in your platforms, and I will really appreciate. Also, you can subscribe to the channel to have more messages. I have two kind of episodes, one that is short on Wednesdays and one that is longer on Fridays. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day. We will listen to each other next episode. Bye.